I decided to do my research paper on Alfred Hitchcock. I decided to focus on his psychology within his films and how it has affected the history of film. My research question is, how has psychology within Hitchcock's films changed the way films have been made today? To further my research on this topic, I had to go back and look into Hitchcock's life. Alfred Hitchcock was born and raised in England by strict Catholic parents. Mothers are a strong character seen in most of his film, which make people question if the relationships within his films are related to his life. Hitchcock went into the film industry in the 1920s. He became a director, and his first film was created 5 years later. Rebecca in 1940 was the first movie to win an Academy Award. Some of Alfred's famous works include Psycho, The Birds, and Vertigo. Aaron Lee Mock, director of film studies at the University of West Georgia, stated, "The Hitchcock style often copied was defined by precise attention to visual detail and stylistic innovation, both qualities considered by critics and the public to be entirely exterior to television production. This describes the way that his films were created and examined, and it shows that his visual depth had also story development." A website titled Into Film had an article written by Joe Ursel, creation manager, that discusses how some of Alfred's techniques were used by others well-known directors such as Spielberg. They discuss the dolly zoom method and how it was used in Hitchcock's Vertigo and Spielberg's E.T. The article further discusses his sense of suspense and style. It discusses Psycho and how Hitchcock killed off the main character within the first 30 minutes. They state Hitchcock famously insisted that cinemas refuse to let in any latecomers, a controversial move at the time but one that helped turn Psycho into an early blockbuster phenomenon. The article also discusses the influential music, like the classic The article concludes by stating that Alfred wasn't as famous as he is now, because people weren't watching his films the way that we are today. He wasn't known to be anything special until years later. He was just seen as yet another entertainer. With that being said, many viewers couldn't comprehend why his films were all mysterious. There are many reports done on trying to figure out what was going on in Hitchcock's head, but the world will never quite know. In an interview by the BBC, the journalist asks Hitchcock himself about his movie themes, and this is his response.
Mr. Hitchcock, why do you always make mystery films?
Life is a big mystery, isn't it? It always has been. I think people are intrigued by mystery to find out about things they don't know anything about. That's a mystery.
Hitchcock's ideas were seen to be unsettling, and many people were curious on how he could conjure up these ideas. His childhood was one of the factors that changed his films. His mother's strict characteristic made his movies have women seen as controlling. Here's a small clip of Alfred explaining where his ideas came from.
I suppose it must have all started when I was in my mother's arms at the age of 6 months. And she said to me, "Boo," and scared the something out of me, you know.
Can you remember any specific instance when you were frightened as a child?
Well, I have a vague recollection of being scared by a policeman. I think that when I was probably about 4 or 5 years of age, being sent with a note to the local police station and being shut in a cell as a punishment for some mishap or I don't even know what it was for. I was probably unjustly incarcerated at the time. But you see, the psychiatrist will always tell you, if you have a fear that is rooted in you and comes from something in your childhood, the moment you can go back to it and release it, all is well. It doesn't apply to me. I'm still scared of policemen.
Another large aspect to his creation was Sidney Bernstein, who was a British businessman who asked Alfred to edit his war film. The film showed the war and the concentration camps. The footage was seen so gruesome and graphic that it is said to change him completely, leading him and his films down the path that he traveled. Where his ideas took him led to him creating mostly mysteries and dramatic movies. 3 popular movies made him thousands of dollars in the US. They included North by Northwest, Psycho, and The Birds. His ideas had a deep effect on society. They all had a dark image, but they had a darker message that went along with the film. Hitchcock was the first to be seen in taking horror into the home. He brought it by bringing creative thought-provoking ideas. For example, The Birds. The birds may have been seen as a bunch of birds simply taking over, and for some that might be a nightmare in itself, but the birds is a metaphor for rage. Columbia College stated, "The birds depicts the kind of everyday reality which from Freud's perspective, a person suffering from mental pathology experiences. It is filled with dangerous, fatal things and gives rise to hysteria, anxiety, and paranoia. But why exactly they are dangerous and fatal is not consciously known." With that being said, it shows the psychoanalysis that the movie went through to discover the hidden meaning. Now that we have taken a look into his life and the making of his films, we're going to view how Hitchcock is still affecting today society. There are many movies and TV shows that follow his storylines or his ideas. Bates Motel is based off the movie Psycho. It has the same storyline with Norman Bates and his mother. Along with this, many movies such as The Girl on the Train have characters based off of Hitchcock's characters. Not only were his ideas taken into consideration, but the way that he filmed was noted as well. The movie Get Out has scenes and camera movements that Hitchcock invented, such as running at the camera to create suspense. Hitchcock may have never known how much of an influence he was going to be one day, but he always knew how to make sure an audience could be frightened. In the same interview conducted by the BBC, Hitchcock explains that the only way to hook in an audience with themes of suspense is to be able to psychoanalyze them to realize what drives fear.
Is there one rule above all others which is indispensable to a director who wants to frighten an audience?
I think he should understand the psychology of audiences. He should also know that audiences love to enjoy the very thing that they have built in, and that's fear. That all started when the mother said boo. But for some inexplicable reason, they like to, how shall I say, put their toe in the cold water of fear to see what it's like. That's why they go for rides on switchbacks and scream and then get off giggling.
Hitchcock may have had an interesting approach to directing and creating films, but without him, many filmmakers today wouldn't have had the fundamentals to build their ideas. Hitchcock continues to influence movies and TV shows today and will continue for decades. Here's one final clip to see into the creative mind of Alfred Hitchcock, a man who changed the history of film forever.
Your new film is called Psycho. Can you tell me something about it?
Well, Psycho is my first attempt at a shocker. In other words, it has in its content certain episodes which do shock. In some sense, it could be called a horror film, but the horror only comes to you after you've seen it, when you get home in the dark.